First of all, thank you all for attending my PhD presentation. Also, the colleagues and probably my supervisors who couldn't make it here, but they probably watch it online. To the presentation of my PhD project, which is about the observation of non-technical skills. Me, myself, I'm an anesthesiologist and intensivist, so quite a clinical background. So normally I work on the left side of the screen in the OR, but part of my time I'm employed by our Department of Simulation and Healthcare, which is on the right. And not surprisingly, in both settings, non-technical skills are quite important. So we already heard Rami talk about the introduction of non-technical skills and how they made their way into the medical domain, coming of course from the aviation industry. And there are several sentinel reports, of which To Err is Human by the Institute of Medicine in 2000 was quite an important one. I'm not going to go through all of them with you. But suggested by Professor Macquarie in the United States, he claimed that medical errors, and these are actual preventable medical errors, now make up the third cause of mortality. So just coming after heart disease and cancer, which conducts for roughly over 250,000 patients a year. And the interesting thing is that when you do root cause analysis to these medical errors, and actually the preventable medical errors, it turns out that non-technical skills are involved in the majority of these cases, and they hit the news every time. So these non-technical skills, they are quite important in order to enhance patient safety. What are the definitions of these non-technical skills? The definition is, quite dated already, but they consent the personal, cognitive, and social resource skills that are actually complement the more technical skills. And they are subdivided, as you can see on the screen. There is quite some literature on non-technical skill training, because you can imagine with the consent that the non-technical skills are an important factor in preventable medical errors, there was a huge interest in enhancing non-technical skill performance. And there is a lot of literature correlating the effort of non-technical skill with improved NTS performance and actually improved patient outcome and reduced medical error rate. What I'm interested in is more the training part and actually the facilitator's perspective on that. Because when you conduct a training with a medical team, you have a facilitator, a so-called instructor, that actually guides or facilitates that training and runs through a debrief with the medical team. And that facilitator has a huge and complex task to perform. Because if you just have a look at this picture and say, for example, you have to assess non-technical skill performance, you have multiple individuals interacting at the same time, and you have to go through a process of observation, interpretation, evaluation, and finally assessment. And coming from the high-stakes industry of aviation, a lot of literature focused on the assessment part. So they did radar validation training, they designed validated frameworks, and not surprisingly, a lot of studies struggled with achieving good radar reliability. And that's not surprising, because probably each and every one has their own perspective on what they watch and how they interpret it. So my PhD project is more on the basis of the observation and the interpretation of these non-technical skills. Because I think the fundamental understanding of what facilitators observe, why they observe it, what they think of that, how they interpret it, and then finally make up an evaluation and an assessment, that's the most important part, and that's currently missing in the literature. And that's paramount, either to interpret these observed inter-rater reliability issues we see with assessment, but also to improve the training of these new facilitators, and finally to optimize learning of the trainees in the medical teams. So the overarching goal or aim, so to say, of the PhD project is to improve the training of this facilitator. And we want to achieve that with a design-based research in which the first two studies will focus on analysis and exploration of the domain of the facilitator, and study 3 and 4 are focusing on the design of a new prototype training and the implementation of it. Our first study is more of an explorative study looking into the current practice and training needs of these facilitators. So you have these instructors, these facilitators. What are they currently doing? Are they using any tools? Are they using any frameworks? How large are the teams? What they observe? Do they do it in situ, or do they do it in simulation center? Do they make their use of video recordings? So to get a bit of a grip of their current practice and how they develop the knowledge in the debriefing of these sessions, that's the overarching aim of the first study. And in the second study, we want to look at the competencies that these facilitators have, and then especially the differences between the novice and the experienced ones. And to look at those competencies, we use the Situation Awareness Framework by Mika Ansley. And the reason we use that is she describes 3 levels around observation. So the first level is a very basic observation level. It's just perceptive. What is it that you are looking at? The second level is the interpretation. What do you make of it? And the third level is the anticipation. What do you expect to happen? And that framework was actually used to describe expert-novice differences before in other studies. And we think it's very suitable for describing this observation of the team by the facilitator as well. And we have them watch video fragments that are standardized and use think aloud strategies to explore what they are thinking, what they are looking at, and how they make up their assessment. In study 3, we want to develop a prototype training for these facilitators based according to the instructional guidelines, as well as a literature review and the first 2 studies from the needs analysis and the competencies. And we'll use focus interviews with the participants and especially the facilitators as well. And not surprisingly, the 4th study then will be the implementation and evaluation of that prototype training. And we plan not only to evaluate the training from the facilitators, but also those facilitators go back to their own institutes or departments and conduct their medical trainings themselves. And we want to include their trainees as well for the evaluation of this 4th study. And hopefully we'll come to some modifications of the prototype training and perhaps make an advisory or a guideline for future non-technical skills faculty training. So that's in a nutshell the overlay of my PhD trajectory. Thank you all for your attention. And if you have